Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Isabel and this is my library. In today's video, I will be sharing with you 7 classic horror short stories you need to read this spooky season. I'm delighted to bring you another spooky video. As you guys know, I live for spooky season. Halloween is my favorite holiday. The fall is my favorite season. And I am ready to read everything spooky. For today's video, I decided I wanted to talk to you about classic horror short stories. It has always been my opinion that horror was meant to be in the short story format. I feel that although I do love novellas and novels that are horror centric, my very favorite horror experiences are with the short story. There is nothing like a horror short story that you can sit and read in one sitting and feel all the emotions rapidly paced because there's a limited page count. And so many of my favorite horror short stories are classics. There are classic writers that have mastered the ability to write a short story and scare the heck out of you. So in today's video, I will be sharing 7 of these horror short story classics that I have loved. I read and reread each spooky season, and I hope that you will give a shot to as well. These 7 short stories that I will be presenting to you today are in no particular order. I could not force myself to try to rank them as top 7. I might even want to do a second or third installment of this video because there's so many good ones. So for now, I'll just say that all 7 of these short stories are absolutely wonderful. And I recommend that you read them this spooky season. Yeah, without further ado, here are the short stories that I recommend to you. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. This is such a beloved story for me. Shirley Jackson is one of my favorite authors. I have read from Shirley Jackson before as far as her novels and novellas are concerned. I absolutely love Haunting of Hill House, and I also love We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Those are 2 spectacular longer works. However, I feel that The Lottery really packs a punch. The Lottery is basically a story that takes place in a small town where all of the members participate in a yearly lottery. They basically draw from a wooden black box that has been passed down from generation to generation in this small town. And once the lottery is over, they move on with their day and they are ready to enjoy a wonderful year. And once the special day of the lottery comes back a year later, they do it all over again. And this short story speaks a little bit about mob mentality, about the dangers of blindly following tradition. It also exposes us to how violent and cruel humans can be when they believe in the need to do something for the greater good. And yeah, I definitely recommend that you read the short story. If you don't know what it is about and it hasn't been spoiled for you already, I definitely think you should pick it up. Simply because it's one of those short stories that once you reach the ending, you want to start and read it all over again because you can't believe that this is actually what is happening in this little town. The second short story I want to talk to you about today is The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury. So Ray Bradbury is another beloved author for me. Most famously, Ray Bradbury is known for his collection of dystopian sci-fi short stories, along with Fahrenheit 451, which is one of his most famous novellas. He is also the author of Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is one of my personal favorites. And today I will be talking to you about an incredibly short story called The Pedestrian. And in this short story, we are simply following a man living in the year 2053. And he is going out for a walk in his neighborhood and he gets stopped by this robotic police. And that's really all I want to say about it, as far as the summary is concerned, because it is so short. But this story highlights or serves as a warning for the dangers of technology, and when technology starts to affect humans and their humanity and their ability to enjoy the world as regular humans. And that's something that Ray Bradbury does so well in most of his dystopian stories, where he's able to really talk about how technology and advancements are really a threat to humanity. And this story, although very, very brief, I find is very relevant for the times that we are living in, with modern technology taking over the world. So I find it to be more relevant than ever. The third short story that I want to share with you today is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And in this slightly longer short story, we are following a couple, and the wife has recently had a child, and she has been finding it difficult to cope after having had the baby, and she's feeling some anxiety, and she's having some problems with her nerves, as they describe it in the book. So her husband, who happens to be a physician, decides that they're going to retreat to an isolated home where she's going to be prescribed the rest cure. And basically, women during that time period were prescribed the rest cure to just calm their nerves and relax. And they were forbidden from doing any kind of activity, including artistic pursuits or writing or painting or drawing, and they were just asked to stay in their rooms and rest until they felt better. And that is the source of horror for this short story, the fact that the protagonist is being forced to have this rest cure, and it's really not helping with her mental health. This short story has probably one of the scariest scenes that I have ever read. There is this vivid image of her um, around the room with the yellow wallpaper, and I don't want to go into detail because, you know, if you've read this, you know the scene I'm talking about. But there's just a scene of her in that room, and I remember being absolutely like petrified when I read it. Like, I felt my blood run cold because it was such like an intense image of what she looked like there in the room. And yeah, it's just wonderful. This short story explores elements or commentary on mental health, on women's hysteria, on the way that women's health issues and ailments have been treated in the past. It also does talk a little bit about postpartum depression and people's inability to understand it as a medical condition. I could not recommend The Yellow Wallpaper enough. The fourth story I want to share with you today is The Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. So if you know me, you knew I had to include at least one Edgar Allan Poe story in this list. I actually had to limit myself and say I only get one of each author, because if I could have, guys, I would have included so many of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories in this list, because I truly feel like he is the master of the short horror story. And so I chose The Mask of the Red Death simply because of its very like gruesome descriptions. It's very gory. And I felt like a lot of the choices I had made for stories that I had picked for this video, a lot of them were not necessarily gory. So I thought that this would be probably the perfect fit for this list. So in The Mask of the Red Death, we are following Prince Prospero, who is a very rich prince, and this is taking place during a time of like the bubonic plague, more or less. And there is a pestilence that is, you know, killing everyone. And Prince Prospero decides that he's going to lock himself up in this castle with a bunch of his rich friends, and they're going to escape the Black Plague or the Black Death. This short story has so much vivid descriptions, has so much symbolism from the colorful rooms to the clock of ebony. There are just so many iconic kind of symbols that this short story possesses that once you read it, you can never forget it. And it has the most ironic of endings, so I really enjoy that as well. And it is definitely scary. And it does talk about or mention privilege of rich people and how many times they feel like they can get away with anything, including avoiding death, right? And part of the message of this short story is that death comes for everyone, right? And it's pretty much difficult to escape death, or pretty much impossible to escape death. The next short story that I want to share with you today is The Monkey's Paw by W. Jacobs. And in this classic, which I'm sure a lot of you have read as children. I remember my first reading of The Monkey's Paw was maybe like elementary school, late elementary school. And The Monkey's Paw basically is following a family that has someone visit, and they are told about this monkey's paw, this talisman that has the ability of granting 3 different people 3 different wishes. And that's really all I'll say for the summary. But as with most wish stories, you know that the themes are always going to be careful what you wish for. And they're also going to be, nothing comes, nothing of great value comes easy, right? So there's also mentions of like greed and avarice, and how these are deadly things, and how many times if we were to get everything we wanted, we would still not be able to control the way that that happens, and we probably would wish to have all of our wishes be removed or be undone, right? So in this classic Monkey's Paw, we see all these elements and more. The second to last story that I want to share with you today is Where Are You Going and Where Have You Been by Joyce Carol Oates. And when I first read this story, I was filled with so much dread. I did not know what the source of the dread and the fear was, but it was palpable. The premise of this short story is we are following a young girl who's 16 years old. She does have an older sister, and she lives with her mom and dad. And she, one night, is out with some friends, and she sees this man, this guy, who says hello to her and talks to her from his car. And it's like an odd kind of encounter, but she doesn't really think much of it. And then the next day, when she is left home alone, all of a sudden, this man in that same car appears at her doorstep. And what proceeds is his attempt at luring her out of her home, basically. And that's, again, all I'm going to say, because these, again, are short stories, so I'm limiting what I tell you. But this story addresses very real fears, right? Very real fears that we have as humans, and vulnerabilities that we have as humans. And my favorite part of this short story is how open it is for interpretation and analysis. And there are so many symbols, so there's so much symbolism as to what the different characters can mean and what is really going on or happening. So although it can be seen or interpreted or read in a very literal level, it also has those very profound kind of ideas that are being brought up. And again, the best way I can describe this is just dread. Like the dread that one feels when reading this story, that something is not right, something is completely wrong. And the last story I want to share with you today is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Wow. I did save this short story for last simply because it does have a lot of trigger warnings. So before you even read this, if you have not read it, just make sure you check out the trigger warnings. But in this short story, we are basically following this computer named Am, and it's like this huge, massive computer that has trapped 5 individuals inside of it, and they are being held prisoners by this computer. And all this computer wants to do is torture them for the rest of eternity. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the premise. This short story obviously explores the threat and dangers of technology. It also explores like these graphic scenes of violence to make commentary on society and people and individuals. And it's a very, very dark story. It's very gory and gruesome. There are elements of misogyny, there are elements of abuse, and in all of its like very vivid, graphic, gory scenes, we see this computer, a godlike figure, right? Taking like this sadistic pleasure in torturing these individuals and keeping them alive for eternity for the sole purpose of torturing them. I really do recommend that if you're going to read this, that you pair it up with an audiobook version of it. There's this really good audiobook version of the short story that has like a lot of like sound effects that are very, very cool. Within each of the breaks in the story, we see parts of Rene Descartes' quote, "I think, therefore I am." And every time we see those pop up, we hear in the audiobook like these very cool, like techie sound effects, like computerized noises, but they're very like old school. And that's just really, really cool. And this short story is actually from 1967. So it's actually a very old story, and it's just so impressive that it's talking about this computer and the sentience of this computer, and it reminds me now of like AI things. And I think that's so interesting because this was written in 1967, so it's very, very cool, and it is really, really graphic and really, really scary, simply because of that very gory and sadistic and torture-like kind of description that is there on every single page. And there you have it, guys. Those are 7 classic short stories that will make your skin crawl, that I think really, really capture the essence and the spirit of what a short, scary story is supposed to do. And I think they're all wonderful, and they're all short stories you can read in one sitting, and they will definitely prepare you for the spooky season. So that's pretty much my list for today. Have you read any of these short stories? Do you have any classics of the horror genre in short story form that you recommend to me? I would love to have some recommendations from you as well. So please go ahead and jot those down in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're able to find 1 or 2 spooky tales that you want to sit down and read this Halloween season. And please make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel, so that I can continue spending some time with you and making more videos like this for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you very, very soon in another spooky video. Bye!